Hello, this is Ruben and welcome back to the Samplecast. This is episode 21. I've been on a little break, but I'm back in full force now with a full packed show. As ever, you can find the podcast version of the show on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, SoundCloud and loads of other podcasting platforms. That's where I can expand on the information in the main show here and also give you an idea of what the libraries sound like. If you'd like to get in touch with the Samplecast, you can reach us via Facebook, Twitter, via email. I'll give you all that information at the end of the show. So let's get on with it. First up, a new brass library from Musical Sampling. This is called Adventure Brass. Now, Musical Sampling have made a bit of a name for themselves recently by developing libraries that are orchestral but have a specific niche, and this one is no different. It follows on from their popular Soaring Strings library, and this one is bold and loud brass lines, perfect for kind of adventure scoring. It runs in Contact and is 5GB in size. There's 3 mic positions there, close, room and mixed, and the brass here are all in ensembles apart from a solo tuba. So you've got French horns here, trumpets, trombones, and as I say, that tuba too. They've all got various articulations, including longs and shorts and also playable repetitions. I've had a listen to the pre-release demos. Sounds really interesting. Head over to the Musical Sampling website for more information. There's a new Dobro library in town from Dream Audio Tools. It's Indie Dobro and runs in the full version of Contact. It's basically a resonator guitar sample library, but this one is really simple, really super easy to use with a very simple interface as well. Here you've got pre-recorded tempo synced patterns with many different articulations too in the playable NKIs with sustained notes, double stops, slide to notes, harmonics, bottleneck, single tones, chords, body hits and bottleneck noises too. So there are 13 NKI patches in total. It's got a really nice simple interface, as I say, and also a very low RAM footprint too. Check it out at the Dream Audio Tools website. Next up, a library that's going to be really useful if you're into your trailer scoring and kind of hybrid electronic soundscapes. It's Artifact Fractal from Audio Imperia. It's an industrial trailer percussion library with gritty, hard-hitting sounds, and it's been developed by German composer and sound designer Valentin Booms. You might know his name if you've listened to a lot of sample library demos over the years. He's quite prolific there, and he's also been featured in many movie and game campaigns too. This library is over 4GB in size. It runs in the full version of Contact and there's 2,000 different samples here. You've got both loops and playable patches. If you're into those libraries from Daniel James or Heaviosity Damage, this has a similar kind of vibe and this is certainly going to be right up your street. So check it out at the Audio Imperia website. Spitfire Audio seem to be taking a break from developing their enormous orchestral libraries to instead develop an enormous vintage keys library. This is North 7 Vintage Keys and features stage pianos and other keyboard instruments from the 60s and 70s. So here you've got an electric piano, a stage piano, electric keyboard bass and the electric clavichord too. These have been very deep sampled. You've got nearly 25GB uncompressed here. It runs in the full version of Contact but also the Contact player, and Spitfire have encased all of these samples in their eDNA engine. I really like this interface. It's useful for twisting the samples, developing arpeggios and really getting the most out of those raw sounds. It also comes with 100 presets developed by composer and Spitfire head honcho Christian Henson, so it's definitely worth having a look at the Spitfire Audio website. This week I'm really proud to include an interview with composer Russell Bell. He started to develop this kind of 1980s vibe for a new project, and I'm including his track Chromavision on the podcast, and also interviewed him where he talks about developing the track and how he did so with a really slimmed down version of his normal studio, hardly using any hardware at all and mostly just software plugins. If you want to hear more from Russell Bell, you can check him out on SoundCloud. He's got loads and loads of tracks on there, thousands now I think, or you can have a look on YouTube where he's got more crazy looking videos like this. So do have a look at that and hear what he has to say on the podcast. This week's big review is from Private Labs, and it's Scream 3 Aleatoric FX, and this is the brass version. There will soon be a fourth version of this library along, which will concentrate on woodwind effects, and you'll be able to get these two as a bundle together, but here I'm just reviewing the brass version. This runs in the full version of Contact and contains brass ensemble clusters, risers, rips, trills, and a whole host of other effects. There's 26 NKI files here in total, and you've got 5 mic positions. That's Decatree, Mid-Hall, Spots 1 and 2, and also a vintage mic, which I'll come on to a bit later. On the interface too, you've got attack and release controls, the mod wheel controls the sample offset, and the pitch bend wheel controls the speed of the playback. Most of the Contact presets have 2 different types of samples recorded here. There's a more softly played version and a louder version, and which one of those you get depends on the velocity that you play. So with this library there's a lot to like. You've got a great sounding hall that these brass have been recorded in. It's really expansive, the ambience is good. Also the actual number of effects and variety is very good as well. The mic positions are useful. I'll give a special mention to the vintage mic position. It's an unusual sound, not something that you're going to use every day, but if I were to be putting together kind of 1930s or 40s sounding old Hollywood kind of grand scores, that would be very useful in that context. I do have to let you know that there's not many options for customization of the sounds beyond what you've got on the interface itself, which is limited. There's the microphone selection and playback speed, and also the mod wheel option for cutting into the samples. It would have been nice to have some of the more rhythmic samples tempo synced as well, since trying to line these up with the pitch wheel is a little bit awkward. To change the pitch you have to adjust the tuning of the whole Contact instrument, which isn't ideal. Perhaps that could have been done with a series of key switches instead. Also some samples have very noticeable player and hall noises, a few kind of squeaks and chair shuffles and that sort of thing. Perhaps these could have been ironed out too. But overall I have to say that Scream 3 Brass is a decent purchase if you're looking for kind of unusual brass effects. Not a lot of companies are doing libraries in this vein, so it's interesting that Private Labs have decided to go down this route. It's certainly something which they seem to be getting better and better at. I've got a couple of really nice freebies for you this week. The first is by Slate Digital, and it's a huge compressor called the Monster Extreme Dynamic Processor. It's essentially a hardcore compression plugin, and it emulates FET Hardware's all buttons mode for extreme compression. Not the sort of compression plugin you're going to use on every track, but it does its job really well. Now, you've got additional knobs on this plugin that were never featured on the original unit for shaping the sound, including adjustments for smoothing high frequencies and a mix knob for parallel compression too. It's free to download from the Slate Digital website, but you will need an iLok 2 to run this. Perhaps you've got one of those because of using East-West plugins or something like that. You can download it from www.slatedigital.com. 99 Sounds is continuing their series of giveaways, and here you've got cinematic loops. These have been developed by Particular Sound. There's 99 loops here, unsurprisingly, and it's 117 megabytes in total. These loops can be dragged straight into your DAW, or you can utilise one of the 2 NKI patches, which have additional controls for adding effects and changing the root key too. The sorts of sounds you've got in these loops are more on the kind of electronic side and hybrid scoring rather than the acoustic side, but nevertheless I found them quite useful. Check it out at the 99 Sounds website. Thank you so much for tuning into the Samplecast. You can reach us in all of the normal ways on social media. We're on Twitter at the Samplecast. You can get us on Facebook. You can also email us directly, thesamplecast@gmail.com. You can head over to the website to find out more information about the show. That's thesamplecast.com. And you can also listen to the podcast, which is a fully expanded version of the show with lots of demo tracks from the different libraries that I've mentioned, and also the full track and interview from composer Russell Bell. It's definitely worth a listen. Until next week, bye bye now.